Fate does not knock, it breaks down doors. In the Alpha King's throne room, where marble gleamed cold as judgment and shadows pooled like spilled wine, a mute Omega servant girl stood accused of theft, while his 5-year-old son pressed small hands against her threadbare skirts and whispered words that would shatter kingdoms. "Mom, don't be silent." The revelation came not as gentle dawn, but as lightning, savage, inevitable, absolute. And Theron Blackridge, the Alpha King, who had sworn never to claim another mate after his wife's death, felt his wolf rise with a recognition that turned his blood to molten silver. She had no name that mattered. In the servants' quarters, they called her the Mute One, or simply pointed when they needed her scrubbing floors, emptying chamber pots, or carrying water up the castle's endless stone stairs. Ilara had arrived at Blackridge Castle 6 months ago, delivered by a traveling merchant who'd found her collapsed on the northern road, half frozen, her tongue apparently stolen by trauma or birth defect. The head housekeeper had taken one look at her, small-boned, colorless, unremarkable, except for eyes the pale gray of winter fog, and assigned her the lowest duties. Perfect invisibility. Ilara wore that invisibility like armor. Her dresses were the color of dishwater, her hair perpetually hidden beneath a servant's cap, her movements practiced in their meekness. She kept her gaze down, her shoulders curved inward, her entire presence designed to slide past notice like water past stone. The other Omegas in the castle might preen and perfume themselves, hoping to catch the eye of visiting alphas, but Ilara understood what they did not. Attention was the enemy. Because Ilara was not mute, and she was not merely Omega. She was Ilara Moonwhisper, last surviving daughter of the Moonwhisper bloodline, gifted with healing magic so potent it glowed silver beneath her skin when she let it surface. Her family had been slaughtered for that gift, hunted by rogue packs who wanted to harvest their power, to drain their blood for immortality potions, to breed them like cattle. She'd watched her mother die protecting her, had felt her father's last heartbeat against her cheek as he'd whispered, "Hide, little moon, hide until you're strong enough to shine." So she'd hidden, cut her hair, burned her family crests, and swallowed her voice like poison. The Alpha King's castle was the last place anyone would look for a Moonwhisper princess. Thrawn Blackridge ruled the northern territories with ice-cold efficiency, his court a place of political maneuvering and calculated alliances. He'd been widowed 3 years ago when his mate died in childbirth, leaving him with a sickly son and a heart that had apparently frozen solid. The pack whispered that he'd never take another Luna, that his devotion to his dead wife was absolute. At a 1.0 pace, Ilara had thought herself safe here. Anonymous, forgotten. She hadn't counted on the child. Prince Kai was 5 years old, small for his age, with his father's dark hair and his mother's fragile constitution. The pack physician said he had weak lungs, a heart that struggled, a body that rejected the alpha strength that should have been his birthright. He spent most of his time in the nursery, pale and quiet, while his father ruled and his tutors despaired. But Kai had his mother's gift for seeing. The first time he'd encountered Ilara, she'd been scrubbing the corridor outside his rooms. He'd stopped, tilted his head, and stared at her with eyes that seemed far too ancient for his small face. Then he'd smiled, radiant, certain, and said, "You shine like Mama did." Elara had frozen, shaken her head frantically, pointed to her throat in the universal gesture for "I cannot speak." Kai had only smiled wider. "You don't have to talk. I can hear you anyway." After that, he'd sought her out constantly, slipping away from his nursemaids to find her in the laundry, the kitchens, the stables. He never demanded she speak, never questioned her silence, but he'd curl up beside her while she worked and chatter about his day, his dreams, his loneliness. And sometimes, when no one was watching, Elara would let the smallest tendril of her healing magic seep into him, strengthening his lungs, steadying his heartbeat. Just enough to help, not enough to reveal. She told herself it was compassion, kindness to an innocent child. She didn't let herself acknowledge the bone-deep recognition that hummed between them, the way her wolf whimpered and yearned whenever he called her friend, the dangerous, impossible truth that this child's soul knew hers. The Alpha King himself was a different matter entirely. Theron Blackridge was carved from winter itself, tall and broad-shouldered, with black hair shot through with silver at the temples, and eyes like frozen amber. His face was all sharp angles and aristocratic planes, beautiful in the way glaciers are beautiful, remote, untouchable, deadly. He moved through his castle like a sword through silk, his presence a constant weight of authority and barely leashed power. Elara had perfected the art of being invisible around him. When he passed in corridors, she pressed herself against walls, eyes down, breathing shallow. When he entered rooms she was cleaning, she became a ghost, a shadow, nothing worth noticing. But lately, she'd felt his gaze. Brief, assessing looks that made her skin prickle with awareness. Once, she'd glanced up to find him watching her with an expression of puzzled irritation, as if she were a riddle that offended him by existing. His wolf had been close to the surface then. She'd seen it in the gold bleeding into his irises, the tension in his jaw. He'd looked away first, dismissing her with visible effort. Elara had told herself it meant nothing, that she was paranoid, that a king would never truly see a servant. Then came the day. Everything shattered. The spring equinox celebration brought visiting packs from across the territories, alphas and their entourages filling the castle with noise, politics, and barely concealed aggression. Elara kept to the shadows, serving wine at the great feast, invisible among dozens of other servants. She didn't notice the poison until it was too late. It happened during the third course. Prince Kai had been allowed to attend, a rare occurrence meant to show the visiting alphas that the Blackridge heir was strong enough to endure court functions. He sat at his father's right hand, small and solemn in his formal clothes, picking at his food with little appetite. Elara was refilling goblets when she caught the scent. Wolfsbane. And something else, something darker, death magic woven into wine. Her eyes snapped to the head table, to the cup being placed before Prince Kai by another servant, a beta male she didn't recognize, to the child reaching for it with innocent trust. Time crystallized. She saw the future in that suspended moment, the prince drinking, convulsing, dying, while his father watched helpless. The alliance that would crumble, the war that would follow, the light going out of those two old eyes. Her vow of silence had kept her alive for 3 years. She broke it in a heartbeat. Kai, no! At a 1.0 hail, like a bell, clear and commanding and impossible, every head turned. The prince's hand froze halfway to the cup, and Elara was already moving, shoving past nobles and guards, her servant's cap flying off to release a cascade of silver-white hair that marked her bloodline as clearly as a brand. She reached the prince, snatched the cup from his hand, and drank. The poison hit her system like liquid fire. Nightshade burned down her throat. Wolfsbane seized her muscles, and the death magic wrapped around her heart like barbed wire. She felt her knees buckle, felt strong hands catch her, small hands, a child's hands, glowing with instinctive healing that wasn't strong enough, could never be strong enough. And then there were other hands, larger, burning hot against her skin. The Alpha King had moved with inhuman speed, crossing the hall in a blur of motion. He caught her as she fell, his arms banding around her like iron, and the sound that tore from his throat was nothing human, a roar of rage and denial that shook the chandeliers. "Healer!" His voice could have split stone. "Someone get the fucking healer!" "No time." Elara's voice was a rasp, blood on her lips. Her vision was graying at the edges, her healing magic rising instinctively, but too slow, too weak against this particular cocktail of death. The poison was meant for him. She'd known it would be, had seen the political calculation in an instant. Kill the heir, weaken the king, create chaos for conquest. "You stupid, selfless!" Theron's hands were shaking, his wolf blazing in his eyes. "Why? Why would you?" "Because he's mine." The words fell from her lips unbidden, truth dragged up from her soul by the proximity of death. My cub, my future, mine to protect, always, always mine. Understanding crashed across the Alpha King's face like a physical blow. His son, his heir, his child had recognized this broken, hidden Omega as his destined Luna, had been drawn to her with the unerring instinct of a wolf cub imprinting on his future pack mother. And she, this mute servant who was clearly nothing she'd seemed, had just swallowed death to save him. "No." Farron's voice dropped to something primal, absolute. "No, you don't die. I don't accept it. I don't fucking accept." He bit his own wrist, tore it open with canines that extended in his rage, and pressed the bleeding wound to Elara's mouth. "Drink. That's an order. That's an alpha command. Drink." The most potent healing agent in existence, but only for a claimed mate, only through the bond. Elara's wolf rose with a whimper of recognition and desperate need. Her lips parted. She drank. Power slammed through her like lightning. The bond snapped into place between them, not gentle, not gradual, but instant and absolute and searing. She felt his wolf claim hers with savage possessiveness, felt her own magic rise to meet his, silver light exploding from her skin as her healing gift activated at full strength for the first time in years. The poison burned away like mist before sun. The death magic shattered against the combined force of their bond. And Alara gasped back to full consciousness in the arms of her mate, her alpha, her king, while his son pressed against both of them and whispered, "I told you she shined like Mama." The great hall was utterly silent. Every eye was fixed on them, on the Alpha King cradling a servant girl who blazed with silver light, whose hair marked her as Moon Whisper royalty, whose voice had shattered her own disguise to save his heir. On the mating bond that crackled visibly between them, gold and silver intertwined. On the prince who looked between them with a smile of pure joy. Theron Blackridge rose to his full height, Ilara still held against his chest. His eyes swept the assembled court with the cold fury of an apex predator who just discovered a threat to his mate and child. "The servant who delivered the poisoned wine," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Restrain him. I want to know who sent him before I tear out his throat." Guards moved instantly. The beta male tried to run and was brought down within 3 steps, screaming denials that no one believed. Theron ignored him. His attention was fixed on the woman in his arms, this impossible, infuriating creature who'd hidden herself so thoroughly and then destroyed her own safety for his son. "You can speak," he said, and it wasn't a question. Ilara met his eyes, her own still glowing faintly silver. "Yes. You're Moon Whisper bloodline, a healer." "Yes. You've been hiding in my castle for months, pretending to be mute, working as a servant." "Yes." His jaw clenched. "Why?" "Because my family was slaughtered for our gift, because I was hunted, because I thought—" her voice cracked. "I thought if I made myself small enough, invisible enough, I could survive. I never meant to." She glanced at Kai, who was still pressed against his father's side, watching them both with rapt attention. "I never meant for him to see me." "But he did." Theron's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. "My son, who has my dead mate's gift for recognizing souls, looked at a mute servant girl and saw his future Luna, saw you. I didn't encourage it. I tried to." "You saved his life." The words were granite hard. "You broke your own protection, revealed yourself to a room full of strangers, and swallowed poison meant for my heir. Do you understand what that means?" Ilara's breath caught. "That I'm a fool?" "That you're his." Theron's eyes blazed gold. "That you're mine. That the fates themselves put you in my path, and I was too blind to see it until you were dying in my arms." He turned to face the assembled court, still holding her, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "I am Theron Blackridge, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. 3 years ago, I lost my mate and swore I would never take another. I believed my heart was buried with her, that my duty was to my pack and my son alone. His grip on Alara tightened. I was wrong. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Visiting alphas leaned forward, sensing drama, politics, opportunity. Theron's lip curled. This woman, Ilara Moonwhisper, last of her bloodline, gifted healer, and apparently the most stubborn Omega in existence, has just proven herself worthy of the highest honor I can bestow. She sacrificed her safety for my child. She broke her silence to save my heir. And in doing so, she revealed what my wolf has known since the moment she entered my territory. She is my true mate. He raised his voice, letting his alpha command roll through every word. I claim her. Before this court, before the fates, before every witness gathered here, I claim Ilara Moonwhisper as my mate, my Luna, and the mother of my heir. Any who challenge this claim challenges me directly. The hall erupted. Shock, outrage, excitement, voices overlapping in a cacophony of reaction. But Theron's eyes never left Alara's face. "You don't have to accept," he said, quiet enough that only she could hear beneath the noise. "I know this isn't how these things are supposed to happen. I know you've been hurt, hunted, forced to hide. But my son recognized you. My wolf recognizes you. And I swear on my life, on my pack, on everything I am, if you accept this claim, I will spend the rest of my days making sure you never have to hide again." Ilara's eyes burned with tears. I'm not what a Luna should be. I'm broken, scared. I've been pretending for so long. I don't know how to... "You jumped in front of poison for my child." Theron's voice was fierce. "You're exactly what a Luna should be, what my Luna should be." Kai tugged on his father's sleeve. "Papa, you're supposed to kiss her now. That's what happens in the stories." Despite everything, the poison still burning through her system, the crowd watching, the impossibility of the situation, Ilara laughed. It came out watery and shocked, but real. Saren's expression softened. The boy makes a good point. He kissed her. Not gently, not carefully, but with the fierce certainty of a wolf claiming his mate, his mouth hot and demanding against hers, his hand fisting in her silver hair. The bond between them flared brilliant gold and silver, visible to every eye in the hall, undeniable proof of fate's design. When he finally pulled back, Ilara was breathless and glowing and utterly claimed. The court had fallen silent again, watching with varying degrees of awe and envy. Theron addressed them once more, his tone brooking no argument. "Let this be a lesson to every pack under my rule. True strength is not found in bloodlines or titles alone. It is found in sacrifice, in courage, in the willingness to break yourself open for those who need you." His eyes swept the assembled alphas. My mate was hunted for her gift, forced to hide her light to survive. That ends now. Any pack, any alpha, any wolf who threatens a Moonwhisper healer will answer to me personally. Is that understood? Silence. Then, slowly, heads began to nod. submission rippling through the crowd. Good. Theron looked down at Alara, his expression gentling. Now my Luna needs rest and healing. This celebration is over. He carried her from the hall, Kai trotting beside them, while the court watched their king walk away from politics and propriety with his fated mate in his arms. 3 days later, Ilara stood in the Luna's chambers, her chambers now, and tried to process how completely her life had transformed. The rooms were beautiful, all warm woods and soft fabrics, windows overlooking the northern forests, a bed large enough for a mated pair and the small prince who'd already claimed the right to sleep between them until Mama feels safe. Her servant's rags had been burned. Her new wardrobe was filled with gowns in silver and white, the moon whisper colors she'd thought she'd never wear again. She had a title, protection, a mate whose wolf had bonded to hers with such fierce devotion that she could feel him even now, in a council meeting 3 floors below, his consciousness a warm weight at the back of her mind. And she had Kai. The prince had attached himself to her like a burr, following her everywhere, chattering endlessly, his health already improving under her careful healing. He called her Mama now without hesitation, and every time he did, something in Alara's chest cracked open a little more. She'd thought she'd lost everything: family, home, identity, voice. Instead, she'd found something she'd never dared dream of, a place where her gift was celebrated, not hunted, a mate who looked at her like she was precious, a child who needed her, a future. Theron found her there, standing by the window, lost in thought. He crossed the room in 3 strides and wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on top of her head. "Regrets?" he asked quietly. "No." Ilara leaned back into his warmth. "Terror, maybe, disbelief, but no regrets." "Good." He turned her in his arms, his amber eyes serious. "I meant what I said. You never have to hide again. Your voice, your gift, your strength, all of it is valued here. You are valued here." "I'm still learning to believe that." "Then I'll remind you, every day, for the rest of our lives." He kissed her forehead. "My stubborn, self-sacrificing, impossibly brave mate." Alara smiled against his chest. "Your Majesty is very eloquent." "Only for you." He pulled back slightly, his expression turning wry. "The council is demanding a formal mating ceremony, apparently claiming you in front of visiting alphas while you were glowing like a fallen star wasn't official enough." "Scandalous." "Completely." His thumb traced her lower lip. "Will you marry me properly, Ilara Moonwhisper? Let me stand before our pack and the fates and bind myself to you in every way that matters?" Her heart swelled. "Yes, always yes." "Good." He kissed her again, slow and deep. "Because Kai has already started planning the celebration. Apparently, there need to be at least 1,000 flowers and cake as tall as Papa." Ilara laughed. That real, unguarded sound that still felt new and precious. "He has excellent priorities." "He has your influence now. I'm doomed." They stood together in the sunlight, wrapped in each other, the bond between them singing with contentment. Outside, the northern forests stretched green and wild. Inside, a small prince was undoubtedly terrorizing the kitchen staff with cake demands. And Ilara, who had spent 3 years silent and invisible, finally let herself shine. Fate is the great equalizer. It sees not titles or bloodlines, but souls. The Omega who hid became the Luna who healed. The king who closed his heart found it opened by a child's wisdom and a woman's courage. And the prince who should have died lived because someone chose mercy over safety. Sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to break, when to speak, when to let yourself be seen. What would you sacrifice to save someone fate destined you to love? Would you break your silence, or would you let destiny pass you by?